Thanks very much for having me along to this. Thanks to the organisers. It's interesting, I think a lot of us are coming to the same conclusions from rather different origins. Imtiaz, you'll be perhaps pleased to know that on my own notes, I wrote down Gigo as well, because I think this is a central point, and this cuts to the very heart of the problem that we're all addressing here today. One of the problems with the internet, with the ICTs, is the unmoderated nature of the beast. We talk about viral text messages, we talk about viral messages, and I think it's worth just pondering for a moment the meaning of the word viral. We all have viruses, and viruses are not very good things. The messages are often very powerful, but if we end up with negative messages going unmoderated on networks like Twitter, like Facebook, like text messages, it becomes extraordinarily destructive. And the other thing that I think I agree with enormously with Imtiaz is the importance of good journalism. The problem we're faced with is the situation where in the past the access to media, not mass media but just media, whatever form of media it was limited to a very small select group of individuals. And I know there's a lot of criticism about the concentration of media ownership, of the exclusivity of media. And those criticisms are justified, but we have exactly the opposite problem at the moment, where we have unmoderated access. And I think the challenge that we have to take note of is how to control or moderate the messages that are out there that are viral in such a way that they're positive rather than negative and destructive ones. And I think the example I wanted to touch on here was in Kenya. I've seen a little bit about Kenya and post-election violence. And what happened there was that as the messages start to flow through the Twitter network, through Facebook, and most importantly on text messages, we saw the idea of tribalism and tribal panic magnified. People were sending messages, a lot of it was complete rubbish, it was complete garbage, and it was enhancing, it was amplifying the tribal messages that were coming from the politicians who were hoping to use that tribal element to win political power. And it's only now, after many, many months, after more than a year of constant reporting, that we're starting to see a deeper analysis of what happened there and starting to understand, and as I've done, that the conflict was not about tribalism. It was about political power, it was about politicians using and pressing those tribal buttons. And we've seen a report that was released earlier this year, a special commission of inquiry that was investigating the causes of the violence. And it said very specifically that the violence was caused by individuals, and there are individual politicians who weren't named in the report. That's the subject of some judicial inquiries that are now to take place. But it was that they named individuals who sponsored the violence, who bought the pangas, the machetes to carry out the killings, who hired the minibuses to transport the thugs, to set up the roadblocks, to carry out the post-election violence. When you understand that it was organised by individuals who rallied people together, who actively promoted this, you start to understand that there was nothing inherent in tribalism. There was nothing inherent in the kind of conflict that we saw. There was no reason for the tribes to fight. But that takes good journalism, it takes solid inquiry, it takes time, it takes professionalism, and it takes, frankly, money. And that's the key element. If there's one message that I want to leave with you, it's that we need to find a way of using the viral nature of the internet, of the ICTs, for their own good. We need to make sure that journalism isn't lost in the process. That everyone who has access, everyone who gets on Twitter, everyone who gets on Facebook, fundamentally has to be a journalist, because they're publishing information. And they must accept, they must stand by those journalistic principles of honesty, integrity, balance, fairness, accuracy.
Thank you. Peter, just on that note, just briefly, how is the BBC in Kenya trying to deal with this unmoderated viral use of media messaging? How does it make you feel, and what are you doing on the ground?
Well, we're old school media, as you know. I'm a broadcaster, a radio, television correspondent, and we write for the internet as well. But increasingly, the only way you can do it, you can't beat them, you can't shut down those elements, and we can't do it by staying with old school media. Increasingly, the BBC is starting to understand that you've got to get on, you've got to be a part of that process. You've got to get your message out through Twitter, through Facebook. It's not easy. And a lot of us, particularly those of us that were brought up in the old industry, in the old media world, it's finding it difficult to keep up with the kinds of changes. But I think that's one of the few ways that we can do it. It doesn't feel very satisfactory, to be honest with you. It feels as though we've got a feet in each pool, and neither feet is doing a particularly good job of taking us forward. So that's really the way it's working. But as I said, I think this is one of those things that we still need to work on.
Thank you, Peter. Swati, I'd love to hear your perspective and your experience of media and conflict, and I believe you've got some images as well to share with us.
Thank you, Simon. I would say, yes, I'm going to show you some images, but what I would like to also share is the kind of work which I'm doing is that I work for an organization, One World, and we have portals, and the focus of the portals is basically to voice stories and bring out stories which are generally not covered by mainstream media. So, with a special focus on human rights. I have been working in this organization for the last 2 years, and so these images are basically stories that we have covered in our course of work. I think also, like as Peter said, like all the points what I'm going to try and talk about is more or less the same things about the importance about redefining news and about the linkages to development. Can we have?
How does it make you feel when you see the media fueling conflict or reducing conflict? What's your perspective in terms of the role of the media?
Here I would say is, I mean, especially last year, I mean, I am from India, and there are a lot of, I would say, situations that happened last year. One was basically a lot of persecution of Muslim youth by the Indian police force. I mean, that was a major thing, I think, happened through a long spell. I also went and attended one of those a tribunal in which all the people, the victims, young boys, were just picked up by the police and tortured, and where they came and gave their testimonies, and the recommendations were put across to the Human Rights Commission. But I think what the media is negating is its role is in terms of, I would take the quote what I think Amira has, that's the Israeli journalist, is that monitoring the centers of power. I think that is what is missing a lot in mainstream media. I think that's a point which needs to be highlighted. Can I have the first image, please? This is Janadesh. It was a march which happened in 2007. And 25,000 people walked from Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh to the national capital. It was a demand for land by the poor, the landless people. And here, that's why I said it is, for me, this is a concept of conflict, because when you're talking about conflict and you're talking about peace, I mean, there can be no peace without peace on an empty stomach. So this is, the next image is also about Janadesh. And if I come to the third image, so basically I'm talking about development. This is the global Standard Take Action campaign, which is done by the UN Millennium Campaign every year. And here the issue is about the price rise, which I think had a major impact on the poor because of the economic crisis last year.